Hi, everybody, and welcome to Grow to Scale Your Business. My name is Marina, and today we have Greg with us. Greg is an expert, over 12 years in
Yes.
sales,
Yep.
over 12 years in building and coaching and expanding sales teams for small to medium business owners or businesses. And he's doing a fantastic job. And today we're going to talk about how or uncover sales team building secrets. So, how do you take non-existing sales team, maybe you're a solopreneur or you have a small sales team, and how you train them and grow them to a powerhouse that can transform your business from a tiny little spot on the map to something fantastic and money generating machine. Thank you for joining us,
Absolutely.
Greg.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
I am so happy to have you here because a lot of customers that I talk to, one of their biggest problems, and I gotta admit that for me as well, is when I hire salespeople, it's the training and the KPIs and the motivation component of having building high performing sales teams. Because
Yeah.
other types of teams are easier, but sales hear so many no's on their journey to the yes that it's very, very difficult to, well, bring them in, build them up, and keep them motivated to do their job. So first, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're coming from and how did you get started?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thanks for having me here. I am coming from a beautiful, sunny Indianapolis, Indiana. At least I think it was sunny the last time I looked outside. Yeah, like you'd mentioned, I've been in sales and sales leadership, sales development for a little over 12 years at this point. Prior to that, I was in the military, got out, walked into sales. Turns out I was pretty good at it. Fast forward, here we are today. Um, Through that time, I've had the opportunity to work with a very diverse range of industries, and when you really start to look at what makes a successful sales team, uh, the industry really doesn't matter. There's core pieces to all of those teams that kind of transcend the product or the service or even the industry or the market that they're in, and it's being able to identify what are those core pieces that structure a successful sales team and how do we duplicate that in our businesses.
So, to get us started on this amazing episode that is going to hopefully blow somebody's mind by the end of it, um, what are the red flags business owners should look for when they think about should I or should I not call Greg to fix whatever is broken in my business?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a couple of indicators that I look for when a client's come to me. I want to know, is their business growing and at what rate? Uh, a lot of businesses that are, they see 5, 8, 10% great 10% growth rate year over year. That's fantastic. So then the question is, what should it be? Right? Understanding maybe they've overperformed that in the past. Maybe they know that there's something missing. They feel like they're leaving opportunity and growth on the table. That's the big piece that I care about. So consistent growth that a business owner knows isn't meeting their full potential. That's one red flag. Another is if they have identified challenges in their team and they're constantly talking about them over and over and over again, and people just aren't getting it. That comes down to why are the skills not transferring? Right? Why can you do it and your people can't? That's another big red flag. If we're looking on more of the micro scale, uh, it's a business owner. Maybe they're a solopreneur. They're the only person that's actually responsible for sales in their organization. Some of the things to look out for is deal cycles taking far too long. They feel like they're getting beat up by the competition and have to give away too much profit to earn new business. Maybe they're seeing revenue go up, but profit margin is going down. Those are the types of challenges that once people identify, they start to look for solutions like what I offer.
Is there a online tool or something where business owners in different industries can log in and check out the industry standard for sales? There are similar tools for other topics like SLA, service, and so on,
Mhm.
but is there something similar for sales?
There's a lot of, I guess, case studies, excuse me, that are out there. HubSpot is one of the primary providers of those. So does LinkedIn. They publish a lot of different papers on averages within industries. I've honestly found the most success giving it a good Google or throwing it into Chat GPT, and then obviously checking those references, right? So it's a really good place to start. But if you don't know where to go, utilizing some type of open source search like that, and then that will give you an idea. It's like, ooh, this is a site that really makes a ton of sense for my industry, right? So if you're in marketing, there's going
Yeah.
to be different standards than if you're in manufacturing. But if you don't know where those are, Google and ChatGPT are the best friends. And then from there, you can find the real resources.
That's a good idea. It's when you're in a certain industry and you want to know whether or not you're comparable and you're up to that industry standard when it comes to percentage of closures or percentage of um, conversions of leads into actual conversations one-on-one
Mm.
with the customer, even without the close. But there are different layers and different levels on the customer journey that you need to measure in order to identify how good you're doing, how well you're doing. And a lot
Yeah,
of times it's not just the salesperson, it's also the the quality of the leads and how those leads enter the salesperson's inbox or
absolutely.
pipeline
Hmm.
before they actually talk to that potential customer prospect or whatever you call them in your specific industry. So
Yeah.
what's the first thing a business owner or the leadership of the business should audit when a team isn't hitting the quota? And let's talk about two layers, the team level and the individual level. Let's start with the team.
Yeah. So when I am auditing, and I'm basically doing the same thing that a business owner typically should, right? Given that they have the skill set. The first thing that I look at is leadership. So it's very easy for us to look at the sales team itself and find challenges or problems. Maybe they're not, their close rate's not as good as what it should be. Maybe they are the ones that are giving away too much profit. So before I really dig in and try to figure out why the sales team isn't performing, I want to know, how is the sales team being led currently? Does that sales leader, whether it's a manager or maybe the CEO themselves, does that sales leader actually have the skills that they're looking for in their people? Or did they hire a sales team because they didn't have the skills and hoped that this team could bring those in, right? And so if we think about, if I am not a strong sales leader and I hire strong salespeople to compensate for that, how do I know how to effectively hold them accountable? How do I know how to effectively coach them? Because they may come in with all of the skills, but they still need constant reinforcement and development. All of us do. So leadership is going to be by far the first thing that I want to look at. And it's not uncommon for that to be where it stops. If we can fix the challenges that leadership has in maybe transferring their skills to that team, holding their team accountable, effectively coaching, sometimes that fixes all of the problems that are in the team to begin with, right? So then typically the follow-up question is, hey, but what if my leadership is solid? Right? I've got a leader that knows how to hold people accountable. They've got all of the skill sets that they're trying to see in their team. They're really good at transferring skills. Uh, the next big piece of the puzzle is, what does the actual process look like that the company is implementing? Is it an effective process? Is it being executed every single time? Is that process being reanalyzed to make sure that it's actually keeping up with the changes in the market and the changes in their prospect base? So those, like, by far, leadership is the first thing that we look at, and there's usually some opportunity for development there.
And that's on the team level. How about the individual?
So let's move that forward then. Let's say that the leader is solid, or maybe we've done some development there. The process is solid, or maybe we've done some development there, and the team still isn't getting it, or we're not seeing the results that we're looking for. The easiest indicator to see where we need to address our focus is going to be with behavior first, right? And these are going to be the sales behaviors that we need to see every day, all day, right? Whether that is prospecting behaviors, whether that is question strategy behaviors, whether that is the behavior of actually following the process that we so diligently put together, right? Is the team actually doing the thing, right? And we're not talking yet, are they doing it effectively, but are they actually doing the thing? Because what's the adage? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? I need to make sure that the horses are at least drinking, right? So once we have the behavior, it's like, okay, well, my sales team is doing the things, but we're still not seeing the result. Then we need to kind of peel that a layer back and identify how are they actually showing up to do the thing, right? So let's take cold calling as an example. Um, I have met one salesperson that enjoys cold calling. He's absolutely crazy.
That's the
I
worst.
hate cold
I
calling.
hate
Yeah,
I
yeah,
hate
it
football.
is the absolute worst. But we know that that is a pipeline filling behavior, right? It is that way in every industry. Some industries it makes more sense than others. Some need higher volume than others, but cold calling will never go away, right? So maybe my salesperson is doing the cold calls, right? They've got their checklist, they pick up the phone and they just get it done. So we've got a behavior, or our behavior challenge is solved. But what's their mentality when they show up to do that cold call, right? Like, are they coming in? I hate this. I don't want to do this. I would be much rather be doing anything else in the world that's going to translate through on that call, right? They could have all the skills, the technique to do an effective cold call, and they could have the behavior of actually doing the cold call. But if they're just checking boxes from an attitude perspective, the cold call is going to be massively inefficient,
Mhm.
right?
So would you recommend
Let's
for somebody who's doing cold calling to have before their shift of cold calling to have like a motivational speech with them? Like what would you recommend to do with somebody like that?
And that's a good question. So it's going to depend on bandwidth. Let's pretend it's a small team. A
Yeah.
100%. Having a good rally meeting at the beginning of the day, if you've identified that people are struggling to show up 100% on their cold calls, put the cold calls at the beginning of the day. Rally beforehand, make it fun, make it engaging. I've seen teams that have a bell every time somebody says no, right? They make the no's a game. Um, there's tons of different strategies that could be used to make this a not mental drain. But that is definitely an area that should be focused on or not overlooked, right? Because you can, like I said, you can have all the skills in the world and you can be doing the activity, but if it's being done just for the sake of it being done, that's an attitude problem, and the whole thing's going to start to crumble.
Yeah. It's a whole different topic about cold calling. We can do a separate episode about it. I had some experience of hiring people to do cold calling, and
Hmm.
pardon my French, it was a shit show because they give up after 10 calls and they don't go
Yeah.
back to calling. But that's your profession, that's the profession you chose. So how do you give up after 10 calls when you know that you have to make at least 100 to get like, 10 maybe say maybe or yes,
Hmm.
and out of those to convert into an actual conversation that is longer than 30 seconds. So
Yeah. Yep. And that goes back to your point about, okay, well, if I understand that this is an unfun task, yet people still sign up to do it as a piece of their job, if not their full job, right? If it's like an SDR style role, So how do I, as a leader, and I love that you asked that question. So it's like, how do I fix that, right? As opposed to just putting the responsibility on them. This is your job. This is what you're supposed to do. Just get over it, right? This goes back to that leadership piece that I look to identify first. Is that leader in the trenches with their team trying to figure out what is going to drive and what is going to motivate them? Or are they sitting back saying it's just your job? Right.
Yeah.
So I love that you brought it up and that's the mentality and the way that you show up.
It's I used to build teams in more tech support and customer service, and it's not sales, but it's still draining, and you get a lot of, nobody calls you or reaches out to you to say nice things. They reach out to you
Yep.
because they have a problem. So it's draining on the mentality of the team. So what I would do is when I would travel abroad, I would bring them, well, first of all, I would bring them chocolates because guys need to eat. I had a team of crews of only men. So they would need to eat some sugar to get their high. But also I would bring them toys. I would go to like dollar stores and bigger stores, and I would buy them basketballs, and I would buy them squeeze, like, the stress balls.
Yep.
And they were like the best equipped group ever. So people would from other teams or from other departments would come in into their room just to play with the toys. And that would be the thing. So while you were talking, I was like thinking, what do I have in my room to like give myself a perk? And I have a TRX where I can do like pull-ups or push-ups or whatnot,
Mhm.
or I have or for guys do crunches every time somebody says no. So every 10 no's, do 10 crunches. At least you
Yep.
will have the abs. If you don't have the yeses, at least you will have the six pack. It's
Yes.
summer. Summer is coming, so it's time for six pack.
There you
Okay,
go.
next question. What are the three KPIs that prove your coaching is actually moving the needle?
I really like this one. Uh, and obviously I get asked this a lot, right? Like, how do we know that this is actually working? And obviously the purpose of engaging with somebody like myself is to truly move that needle, right? We need to see tangible growth. Uh, but there's a big difference between doing uh, a 1 day session where we just spend 8 hours just rawing the team to see that initial spike. You can kind of think of it as a sugar high, right? Like you get that spike of energy and then it's gone in 3 weeks, right? Because all of that hype has kind of fizzled out of the room.
Yeah.
So I take the approach of let's do a little bit over a long period of time. Let's do a little, a lot instead of a lot, a little. So it becomes a little bit more challenging when you're looking on a more long-term basis to see that immediate spike in my revenue, that immediate spike in my appointment density or the pipeline being full. And so when I'm working with a client, the what I teach them to look for is how is your team showing up? That's how we know. That's going to be the first indicator. Again, whether we're even doing a 1 day session or we're working together for months or weeks on end, is how does your team show up? That we need to make sure that the material and the change is actually kicking in. So the first real indicator is going to be that your team is catching their own problems, right? So it's like, hey, I did a cold call, hung up the phone, and went, ooh, I missed a step there. I missed a piece, right? We haven't seen any implementation yet. We haven't even seen any result yet, but they're catching their mistakes, right? It tells us that they're actively thinking, they're trying to apply the material, and they're studying their own behaviors, right? The way that they're implementing techniques and the way that they're showing up. So that's really that first initial phase. It's relatively easy to find. The second is going to be that they start to talk different, right? So it's like, okay, well, I know that my cold call should be structured in XYZ way, right? This is kind of what my talk track needs to look like. So first they're catching that they did it wrong. Then they're starting to practice and implement that, right? There's some marbles in the mouth, for lack of a better word, right? They may stumble over things a little bit, but they're trying to get it in there. They're trying to make it sound like them. They're trying to do the right things. Great. So that's step two. Step three is where we have full implementation and now we're tweaking things, right? So it's like I have identified that this was a challenge. I have started to implement change. I have fully implemented change, and now I'm tweaking for success. And most of the time, those are the steps that must occur before we actually see the measured physical needles move. This is where it ties back to leadership as well. If the leaders are looking for, well, we made this change, we got coaching, we got training, whatever the case may be, and I expect results tomorrow, it's an unrealistic expectation for your team, and that's a big part of my responsibility is setting an appropriate expectation of how long does it take to make change, right? And a good way of thinking about that is how long did it take us to get here,
Yeah.
right? It's like going to the gym, right? You see that person that is muscular, maybe they've got the ideal physique that you're looking for. It's like, okay, well, how do I do that? So you go to the gym, you show up, it's like I lifted weights, what happened? It's like, well, it takes consistent implementation to build those habits and
And you
to
lifted the
have that
weights, but
growth over time.
you ate pizza right after that. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Everything went away, right? I didn't learn
yeah.
anything from it. So yeah, that's really where we start to see, or that's what I look for to understand, is this heading in the right direction? Now, after that, uh, the way, I guess, if you want to think about it, the KPIs or the metrics that we would look at is going to be what is the most important to the client, right? So if it's not broke, don't fix it type of a thing, or if it's not where the biggest hole in the dam, then why would we worry? It's, let's say, use close rate as an example. They're like, well, my close rate didn't improve. It's like, yeah, but that wasn't the problem in the first place, right? Like, yeah, there's a problem there. We'll get to it. But the biggest problem was you didn't have any new people in your pipeline, right? So, like, let's focus on that first. So once we've got those behaviors implemented, we start to see the pipeline fill. Okay, great. Now let's go focus on qualifying. Okay, we got that fixed. Great. Now let's go focus on closing. Instead of trying to fix all of these things at the same time, we need to move that needle intentionally and strategically for wherever the biggest gap is going to result in the most return for the client.
When you're talking about KPIs, it immediately triggers in me two stories that are super important for business owners to understand that when you set up KPIs, first of all, there are two types of KPIs. One is the organizational or the um, business level KPIs that are important for the
Mm-hmm.
entire business in order to see results and see whether or not the business is moving in the right direction. But then there are KPIs for the individual and the team that shows whether or not they're on the same track as the business. Because if you're not keeping, if the KPIs of the individual and the team are not going in the same direction or have the same interest as the organizational
Yeah,
direction, then you're just running in, you're not going to meet your goals.
it's 100% right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that
100%.
you have something that you wanted to say about that?
Oh, I mean, it goes back to when you were asking me, where do we start from an audit perspective? It is with that leadership, because they should be the ones communicating this mission, this vision,
Yeah.
right? And so if we just start with the sales team, and to your point, they're thinking, well, the close is the most important because that's what fills my paycheck. And the CEO's thinking like, no, we need to go after market share. Well, then the two are in misalignment. So even though the sales team might be performing from their standard, the CEO's seeing this like, why is my team failing?
Yeah. And it's very
Yes.
important to be careful about the KPIs or the expectations that you set with your team and the individuals, because if we take as an example a real story from healthcare industry, when the I think it was a medication manufacturer, and their goal that they set up for the team, the KPI was to make X amount of sales for that specific medication. So the sales team not only met that, they overachieved the goal, and
Hmm.
they were very interested why, how come they were so successful. So they went back and actually looked into the sales and who they sold to and how much they sold and so on. And what they realized was that the salespeople were so focused on reaching their quota and reaching their goal that they started selling the medication off label. They started selling it to
Mm,
the wrong audience just for the sake of closing the quota
yeah,
and generating the revenue. And that triggered a huge FDA investigation, and the FDA penalized the sales team. And since then, the off-label usage is very regulated, and it has to be labeled and so on. So that was a trigger for the FDA to start and putting more attention. And the manufacturers are not allowed to do that. So, but the
interesting.
salespeople are not necessarily at fault at that specific time because they
Hmm.
were given KPIs, but they weren't given the right KPIs.
Yeah,
It were
yeah,
too generic, and that's it.
yeah, 100%. And there, while we're on KPIs and metrics, uh, especially for a business owner that is building a team for the first time, building a sales team for the first time, they're like, okay, so I've got an idea about the KPIs for my business. So that's step one. How do I get to where I'm going? How do I build metrics around that? Cool. I'm going to effectively communicate those and coach to those in my sales team. Great. That's step two. But then what we'll find is that the KPIs and the metrics for the sales team do not coincide with how they're compensated, right? So on on one dashboard, my ranking internally, I might be really performing, but on my commission check, I'm underperforming where I want to be. Or I can do it the opposite. I can make a lot of money, but all of a sudden it looks like I'm failing internally. It's
How
because
would
there's a
that
niche.
happen? What scenario
So
would
an
that?
example of that is me as a business owner. I want to drive revenue, right? So revenue growth. So I'm measuring the sales team. Are they successful based off of how much revenue that they drive? But my solutions are low dollar to high dollar. Okay. So I want to incentivize or I want my people to sell more high dollar stuff, but I compensate them on new account acquisition. So if I'm a salesperson and I'm going, okay, well, I'm just going to sell a bunch of the cheap stuff because that's what I'm paid on, right? And then the same could be the inverse, right? So it that's usually where we find a misalignment is the business is wanting to grow either market share or revenue or growth for existing accounts, right? So maybe let's farm what we have, but the compensation is around another metric type, and that's where the salesperson is going to run. Or the worst case scenario, I ran into this actually just the other day. The salesperson was on just straight salary. There wasn't a commission structure. And from the business owner perspective, I get where they're coming from. Like, hey, I need to take care of this person. It's like, great. Um, but you got to have a lot of faith in that person's drive to do the difficult thing, to not give them an incentive for doing the difficult thing, right? So let's going back to cold calling. If I'm going to get paid the same whether I cold call or not, most people are going to shy away from cold calling, right? Like there has to be some altruistic intention to just do the business owner a solid for me to cold call when I'm going to get paid the same regardless. And I have a real story uh,
We love
that I'll share
stories.
with
Go
you, and
ahead.
I will. This company is an incredibly well known company. So I'm not going to say anything because they have more than enough money to put me in the poorhouse. So, but I will paint the story about this, and it talks specifically about sales misalignment and doing the wrong thing but looking good doing it, that you just mentioned. And theirs was actually set up to where compensation uh, was around selling a high ticket item. Uh, Performance measurement was around selling a high ticket item, but they did not close the loop on basically canceling and reactivating is probably the best way that I can frame this, right? So I'm going to take an existing customer, I'm going to cancel and just reactivate this high ticket item. So it looks like new acquisition on paper, right? Now, and this is a company that no, hang on. I'm not going to say that. So this is a company that I know intimately in some form or fashion. So what ended up happening, to your point, is that people figured out that they could do this and were these top performers. Everything's great here. Okay. Uh, so then the company, instead of doing their due diligence from a leadership perspective, like you had mentioned, and looking into why do we have these outliers that are just killing it and everybody else is middle of the road. Instead, they said, if they can do it, everybody can do
Everybody
it.
else can do it.
That's the new metric. That's the new benchmark. And everybody knew, like at the sales level, everybody knew what was happening, right? But then you start to run down a disciplinary track where you are holding people accountable to a metric that is unrealistic because it was set by somebody doing something unethical or against the company's best interest. Ethical, I guess you could make the argument there, but against the company's best interest, to basically game the system. And so by having a lack of oversight from leadership and a lack of trust but verify, all of a sudden now they're like, well, why can't we find any good salespeople? Like we bring people in, they can't meet the metric, we fire them. We bring people in, they can't meet the metric, we fire them. It's like, well, that it was falsely inflated by the handful of bad actors when really your growth should have been a little bit lower. So, anyways,
Yeah.
it's a fun little
No,
story that
it's a
is very
fantastic
much along the line of that.
example. It correlates exactly with the tech support example. And you give those bad actors, or yeah, I want to call them bad actors. They are what they are, who
Mhm.
are cheating the system. You're giving them perks, you're giving them maybe bonuses or pay raises that are unfair to their colleagues because the colleagues are actually doing what they're supposed to do on the level that the entire organization is operating, or maybe even the industry. And then those bad actors are overcompensated or over what is the word I'm looking for, perked, not perked,
Yeah,
but over perked, for things they don't deserve. So they
yeah,
have better bank account condition because they are smarter on, and that's basically theft, right? It's equivalent to
mhm,
theft
yeah,
or to doing something illegal because the company has certain policies, certain regulations, certain um, processes, and if you don't work within those scope, within that scope, you're basically stealing from the company because you're getting money you don't deserve.
yes, yep, exactly, exactly. But it can look good
Okay.
on paper, and so then it
Yes.
just it creates a snowball effect if it's
And
not
then you
put in
put in your
check from
resume,
from
top
upper leadership.
performer for 2025.
Yep.
10 years in a row, top performer.
Yep.
Okay, next question. When a team stalls post-trade,
Hmm.
after you did your thing and they stalled, how do
Yeah.
you diagnose the root cause and how do you get them out of that jam?
Yeah. The turn of phrase that I will use is look left, right? So typically when we're going to have a stall that's showing up in some type of a metric, usually we're going to see that more toward the end of the sales process, right? So all of a sudden our close rates start to drop off. All of a sudden our average deal size starts to get smaller, right? uh, Wherever the problem is showing up, the symptom is coming to the surface, the root cause happened before that, right? So when people come back and they're like, hey, Greg, our close rate's struggling. Um, why can't we close more? It's like, well, let's talk about how those interactions got to the close in the first place, right? And what we will find every single time is that there was something that was done incorrectly or inefficiently before that, but it's showing up when we go to try to close the deal. So we either don't have good pain, we don't understand the decision making process, we didn't set clear next steps, right? Maybe this person wasn't qualified when they came into our funnel, but we wanted to hit that number. And so we just kind of did the song and dance all the way at the end. And it's like, well, what are the magic words that I need to say to get this person to buy? It's like they were never qualified in the first place. Like there's nothing that you can say to get them to buy. Uh, so that's the diagnostic is literally taking it step by step in reverse and figuring out where the first weak link is. And then we fix that weak link and then we keep going backwards because there's probably more before that. We just fix those links as we go all the way back to the first introduction with that prospect. Uh, so that's as far as how we can identify the root cause. So then it comes down to once we identify that weak link, how do we actually fix it? And I'd mentioned a piece of this earlier when we talked about the red flags at the beginning of the conversation. Um, there's there's two different ways that you could try to fix that. One is retraining, and then the other would be coaching and accountability. And I lean on coaching and accountability, right? So if a manager or a sales leader is going through and it's just like, hey, we identified that you're not qualifying effectively. Here's how you qualify. Go qualify right. Problem's probably going to pop back up again because there was a reason it broke in the first place. And then we're going to start the cycle all over again. Here's how you qualify. Go qualify appropriately. Now you know how to do it right. And I mean, this can rinse and repeat over and over and over again, right? And then the sales manager's getting frustrated, the sales reps getting frustrated. So retraining is probably not the right solution unless there is genuinely a skills gap. But oftentimes it's the leader that needs to go through and effectively coach that seller on how why the problem arose and what they should do to fix it. And that's creating one, it's allowing the sales rep to solve their own challenges because inevitably something's going to pop up again, right? Instead of what is it? There's a term for it, learned ineptitude or something along those lines, right? Like you can basically, if somebody's going to solve all of my problems for me, I'm just going to wait until I have a problem and then let them solve it, right? But there's a lot of missed business that's going to happen between when the problem actually started and when it got caught.
Yeah.
So if we can learn to identify our own challenges and fix those through effective coaching from our leadership, then it earns compound interest on long-term success.
And I love that you're saying it because there is a high value and high importance for the leadership and the owner to be involved in every aspect of the business. And when you are involved, that's where you start working on the business versus working in the business. You have the
Hmm.
time and you have the bandwidth to actually go in and check in with the teams, with the sales teams, for this example, and talk to them. Hey, you've been through the coaching, you've been through the training, where are we at? Like check in with them every couple of weeks, or in the beginning, even every at the end of every week. Friday, how was your week? How did you do? Where did you have gaps? Where did you need help? How can I help you? And it doesn't have to be the business owner. It depends on the size of the business. Sometimes the sales team has a VP of sales or has a
Hmm.
sales a manager over that team that doesn't necessarily require the owner's involvement every single time. But when we say the word leadership, we mean whoever manages that sales team,
Yeah.
and allows them. And one of the biggest problems is with sales teams is how do you hire and who do you hire, and how green they are when you hire them. Because the
Hmm.
greener they are, the more hands-on as a leader you have to be. So I was working with a company um, that had a VP of sales, and the VP of sales was experienced, but the problem was that the owner, in order to save cost on expenses, on hiring people, on headcount, what he did was for every position, almost every position, he would hire like the greenest people ever. They have no experience. They've never, for sales purposes, they've never done sales.
Yeah.
And the VP of sales, instead of being a leader and leading the team and expanding, because we were working on expanding that company into another geographical location, Instead of
Hmm.
leading that expansion, he was busy hand-holding and teaching and trying to fix the problems they were creating because they were too lacking of experience to make the decisions themselves or to
Yeah.
take action themselves. Even the contracts, they would make repetitive mistakes over and over and over when they were creating
Hmm.
the contracts. It's like, so you saved money when you hired them, so you're paying them lower paycheck, but they're not generating you any real revenue because they're
Yeah.
holding the VP hostage for every
Yeah.
single transaction.
And that comes down to an inefficient or poorly structured onboarding plan, right? And that's another it's a rather common challenge that I encounter with clients is they think that onboarding and orientation or onboarding and training are the same thing, and they are not,
No.
right? Like orientation is part of onboarding, training is part of onboarding, but if you do not have a strong, consistent, constantly adapting onboarding plan, yeah, you're going to run into challenges like that where it's just like we bring in these new folks, even some of the experienced people, right, still need to go through a structured onboarding plan. Is how
Yeah.
you build them into the environment and the culture of your team. It's how you set those proper expectations. It's how you free up the bandwidth of your leadership.
And it doesn't matter which team they're with, but the sales team, especially because they get so many no's during during their daily routine work,
Hmm.
they need to feel supported that the organization is behind them to give them all the tools and all the knowledge they need in order to do their job effectively and efficiently and generate that revenue for the business. So by
Yeah.
coming to them on a Friday, hey, where did like how can I help you and what is expected next week or what is our plan for next week? The feeling of abandonment that they're
Hmm.
thrown into the hot water and just like go and learn how to swim yourself is mellowed down and it's lowered so they feel more confident that they will have the support of the organization if something happens. And
100%. And I see that a lot, especially with entrepreneurs that are just hiring their first sales team. Uh, and I tell them we need to build the bird cage for the bird, right? So I've got this, whether it's an experienced seller or even a green seller, right? I've got this great, flashy, fun new resource to my company that is going to help earn me some money. I've got this expensive bird, and I brought it in to my home with all the doors open because they can leave at any time, and failed to build a bird cage for it. Right, failed to give them, to your point, the resources, the structure, and the support that they need to actually thrive here. And so when you're hiring green sales reps, that shows up and you just churn through them because none of them actually have an opportunity to develop. And when on the other side, if you hire experienced sales reps, they're going to figure out real quick this isn't a supportive environment because they've been here and done it and they're out the door anyway. So it's
yeah.
like take the time and invest up front in building out that structure and what that needs to look like. Slow down on hiring the salesperson. I know maybe you didn't get into business to be a salesperson and it can probably suck. Uh, but if you do it right the first time, you save yourself a lot of headache in the long run.
And the last point to it, which is very important to understand, that the most expensive activity in the business is the hiring, not the retaining
Mm-hmm.
of those employees. So if you already went through the hiring process and you already placed people in positions, make sure you take care of your people and you give them what they need and you support them and you listen to them if there is a problem. Because when you have the turnover and people are
Mm-hmm.
leaving and you will have to rehire. The rehiring will cost you much more than giving them more like higher salary or giving them a bonus once a year
Yep.
or whatnot or for performance because that bonus will be much lower than the cost of hiring somebody new.
Yeah. Yep.
The time it takes to train them, it's that time. So think about how much it's going to cost you 3 or 4 times of training a new person.
Mm-hmm.
Then just give that money to the existing person or give them tickets to a ball game or whatnot to keep them happy as long as they're doing a good job, right? It's not like
Yep.
if they're failing, give them money, but if they're doing a good job, keep them there, keep
Yeah.
them
No,
happy.
you're absolutely right. There's multiple like public source calculators that are out there that sometimes I'll even use in conversations that will just tell you, like, you punch in a little bit of your variables about your company, it'll tell you how much a bad hire is going to cost you. Like if you did it wrong and they leave, like there's that's what it there's the dollars and cents, right? It's usually got easily five figures, if not six.
Last topic or last question. And I love that you said that because it's a great segue. Give us three quick moves any leader can make today to kickstart real change in their organization when it comes to sales.
Yeah. And this is kind of going back to that initial audit, right? That's probably the best move to make is to audit where you're at and then figure out the weakest link and move forward. So the steps to that, whether it's you as the primary sales producer or if you've got a team, look at behavior first. Am I or my team doing the activity that is necessary to drive sustainable growth? Once you're done with that, you need to look at the attitude that people are showing up with. So the solopreneur that hates sales and they started a business because they were passionate about their product that they had developed or the service that they developed it and just knows like I just gotta do this thing, adjusting that, adjusting the mentality, adjusting the way that they show up to execute the activity, and then the same thing if they've got a team. And then the last piece would be, okay, cool, I'm doing the activity, I'm showing up 100%, is looking at what skills am I missing? Where are people falling out of my pipeline? That's a skill that I need to start to assess and build capabilities around.
And that is part number one. A wrap for part number one. And
Excellent.
Greg, thank you so much. It's fantastic. And in the next episode, we'll have some actionable stuff that we can start
Absolutely.
implementing in the business. So stay tuned and um, don't lose us. Keep your eyes peeled for part number two that will come up very, very soon. Thanks for joining us, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye, guys. Bye,
Thanks for
Greg.
having me.
And we'll have Greg's contact info in the comments below, obviously, as usual.